The Sufi poet Rumi once wrote, "Out beyond ideas of right and wrongdoing, there is a field. I'll meet you there." It's in that place that nonviolent communication helps us to live. It's quite a different world than this world of right-doing and wrongdoing. Long before I reached adulthood, I had already learned to communicate in the impersonal moralistic judgments. These do not require us to reveal what's alive in us. They simply require us to judge people. If my teachers assigned a task I didn't want to do, they were mean or unreasonable. If somebody pulled out in front of me in traffic, I might react by thinking or saying, "You idiot." When we speak this language, we think and communicate in terms of what's wrong with others for behaving as they do. Our attention is focused on classifying, analyzing, and determining levels of wrongness. When I'm communicating in the way I was programmed to communicate, if my life partner wants more affection than I'm giving, she is needy and dependent. But if I want more affection than I'm receiving, she's aloof and insensitive. If my partner is more concerned about details than I am, she's picky and compulsive. On the other hand, if I'm more concerned about details than she is sloppy and disorganized. The relationship between language and violence is the subject of psychology professor O.J. Harvey's research at the University of Colorado. He took random samples of pieces of literature from many countries over the world and tabulated the frequency of words that classify and judge people. His study shows a high correlation between the frequent use of such words and incidences of violence. It doesn't surprise me to hear that there is considerably less violence in cultures where people think in terms of human needs than in cultures where people label one another as good or bad, right or wrong, normal or abnormal. There is another way, and I'm glad that we'll have a chance to explore this as we go along. This other way being, let's not judge each other right or wrong. Let's connect in a way in which we continue to enjoy contributing to one another's well-being. The Indian philosopher Jaddu Krishnamurti once remarked that observing without evaluating is the highest form of human intelligence. For example, if someone says, "You're too generous," if we were to separate observation and evaluation, this might sound like this. "When I see you give all your lunch money to others, I think you are being too generous." Another kind of confusion of observation and evaluation is when we use verbs with evaluative connotations, like if we say, "Doug procrastinates." If we separate observation from evaluation, it might sound like this. "Doug only studies for exams the night before." Another confusion comes from the use of words denoting ability without indicating that an evaluation is being made. That might sound like this. "Hank Smith is a poor soccer player." Separating observation and evaluation, it might sound like, "Hank Smith has not scored a goal in 20 games. And then we have the use of adverb and adjectives in ways that do not signify an evaluation has been made. That would sound like, "Jim is ugly." If we say it in harmony with nonviolent communication, we might say, "Jim's looks don't appeal to me." The second component I'd like to focus on now is how to express clearly our feelings at any given moment. Psychoanalyst Rollo May suggests that the mature person becomes able to differentiate feelings into as many nuances, strong and passionate experiences, or delicate and sensitive ones, as in the different passages of music in a symphony. For many of us, however, our ability to express feelings, as Rollo May describes it, is limited At a nonviolent communication workshop, a college student spoke about a roommate who played the stereo so loudly it kept him awake. When I asked him to express how he felt when this happened, the student replied, "I feel it isn't right to play music so loud at night." I pointed out that when he followed the word feel with the word that, he was expressing an opinion but not revealing his feelings. I asked him to try again to express his feelings. He responded, "I feel when people do something like that, it's evidence of a personality disturbance." This difficulty in identifying and expressing feelings is common. One such dissatisfied woman brought her spouse to a workshop, during which she told him, "I feel like I'm married to a wall." The husband then did an excellent imitation of a wall. He sat mute. Exasperated, she turned to me and said, "See, this is what happens all the time. He sits and says nothing. It's just like living with a wall." I said, "It sounds to me like you're feeling lonely and wanting more emotional contact with your husband." She said, "Yes." And I said, "I'm afraid that when you tell him things like, 'I feel like I'm living with a wall,' notice you're not expressing your feelings when you say that." When she expressed herself as I suggested she do, by telling her husband how she feels, she says, "I feel frustrated when I need contact with you and I don't know what you're feeling. Would you be willing to learn how to express your feelings more openly?" When he heard that, the wall turned into a real human being and started to open up and say that he wants to do that, but he would need some help because he didn't have much experience with knowing how to express his feelings. I hope now I have clarified the importance of feelings and how we need to have a good vocabulary of feelings and express them openly. And always express our feelings to others with reference to our needs. When we express our needs indirectly through the use of evaluations, interpretations, and images, others are likely to hear criticism. And when people hear anything that sounds like criticism, they tend to invest their energy in self-defense or counterattack. I was once asked to mediate between two tribes that were at war in northern Nigeria. In 1 year, 1/4 of the population had been killed. And I asked them this question. I said, let's begin by getting clear what everyone's needs are that aren't getting met. So who would like to start? What needs of yours are not getting met? A chief from the Christian tribe screamed across the table, "You people are murderers!" Immediately a response came back, "You people have been trying to dominate us." This is sadly what I see going on in almost every conflict that I'm asked to mediate in. Instead of knowing how to say what's alive in themselves, people only know how to express these judgments. So my job in that case is to translate their judgments into their needs and help the other side see the need and leave off the enemy images. So when the chief said, "You people are murderers," I said, "Chief, are you saying that your need for security isn't being met in this situation?" He looked at me and he said, "That's exactly what I'm saying." Well, of course, he didn't say that. He probably hadn't been trained to think in terms of needs. But needs, I think, are always a more truthful expression of what's alive in people than these judgments of others that we've been trained to make. So having got his need for safety clear, I turned to a chief from the other side of the table and said, "Would somebody from this side just repeat back the chief's needs so I'm sure we're all connecting?" And the person who responded said, "Then why did you kill my child?" Well, of course, with such tension between the two sides, it wasn't easy for me to help the other party to hear the first party's needs. But finally he heard that the other person had a need for safety. Then I helped the other side translate their judgment of, "You have been trying to dominate us," into their needs. And I said to that chief, "Are you saying you have a need for equality that isn't being met in this situation?" And he said, "That's exactly what I'm saying." And I helped the other side to hear that. Now, to get that far, to get both sides to see that the needs involved on the one hand were safety, a need for equality. There were some others, but it took us well over an hour and a half just to get the first two needs expressed, just to get them both to see that the need for safety and equality were involved in this conflict. At that point, a chief that hadn't spoken yet said to me in a very animated way, "If we know how to communicate this way, we don't have to kill each other." And that has been my experience. When we have a language of life, a language of needs, it's amazing how conflicts which seem impossible to resolve themselves. After we have expressed our observations, feelings, needs to the other person, we follow it with a specific statement telling them what we would like them to do to contribute to our well-being. To do this, I recommend using positive action language. This means saying what we do want rather than what we don't want. We also want to avoid vague, abstract, or ambiguous phrasing, and to word our requests in the form of concrete actions that others can take. I was once invited to work with some black high school students who suffered a long litany of grievances against their principal. They regarded the principal as a racist. A minister who worked closely with the young people noted how angry they were with him, and he was afraid of where their anger was taking them. And he knew of my work, and he suggested that the students spend some time with me. When we got together, they began by describing what they saw as discrimination on the part of the principal. They gave me several examples. After listening to what they said, I suggested that they get clear what they would like him to do differently. One of the students was pretty skeptical that that would help. The student said to me, "What good would that do? We went to him one time and told him what we wanted. His answer to us was, 'Get out of here. I don't need you people telling me what to do.'" I asked, "What did you ask of him at that time?" They recalled saying to him that they didn't want him telling them how to wear their hair. I suggested they might have received a different response if they had expressed what they did want rather than what they didn't want. They then told me that they had said to the principal that they wanted to be treated with fairness, and then they said he got real defensive when they said that. He denied that he had ever been unfair. I ventured to guess that the principal might have responded differently if they had asked for specific actions, rather than expressing their request vaguely by saying what they wanted fair treatment. Working together, we found ways to express their requests in positive action language. At the end of the meeting, they clarified 38 different things that they wanted to request of the principal, including such things as, "We'd like you to agree to black student representation on decisions made about dress code. And we'd like you to refer to us as black students and not you people." They went in, expressed these 38 things to him. They called me up that evening and they were thrilled. He agreed to all 38.